Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Now I know what you're thinking, this is not Saltwell Safari Park. Well, that's because we are starting a new adventure in a new franchise mode and we're calling this Northlands National Park. It is a tundra zoo based in North America, and what I'm looking to create here is something really quite vast and spread out. So a lot of the kind of guest areas are going to be these little hubs dotted around what is actually quite a large map. Now I've gone with a map that's already been terraformed a little bit due in Planet Zoo's design. As it was like loading up the map, it terraformed this for me. It's got quite a few substantial hills, but it looks like there's kind of like a valley winding through them, which we may make use of. Obviously we're going to terraform a little bit more as we go, and I'm just trying to figure out a decent path to start us off with. So there's going to be a lot of trees and stuff covering this entire map. I may do a nice long lake running all the way through it as like this really natural sort of water feature to go all the way through it and make it quite a large part of it. The one thing I don't like about these maps is the background box, or the backdrop to it. It seems so far away from the zoo itself, and you've just got this flat land surrounding the whole zoo, and it would be really nice if in future we could have something that looked like it merged with the map itself. I think that would be really nice to do, so that we've got this really cool background and it makes it look like the zoo isn't just plonked in the middle of this flat ground, because even when you have like a terraformed part, the build area is so like surrounded by this vast nothingness that it looks a bit strange regardless. So suspend your disbelief and we'll just pretend that this is sort of part of a build-up area already. So what we're going to do is we're just putting in a few trees and stuff just to fill in the surrounding area, and I want to make it kind of look, so everything's kind of got to have a backdrop or a background, and there's got to be some framing somewhere. I'm kind of going to try and go as artistic as I possibly can here. So we're making a little forest here, and one of the things I don't like about franchise mode is that we can't delete the starter entrance, so I'm actually going to hide that with trees in a future episode. I've got 2 episodes of this series done already, including this one, and I'm not going to talk too much about the second one, but basically we do eventually hide that entrance behind some trees. So we're building here a visitor centre, which is actually going to be like a series of log cabins with an information kiosk, some toilets, some basic staff buildings and a couple of exhibits, because we're going to try and start by breeding some exhibits to bring in some money. We are playing on hard mode here, so we do have to be careful and be mindful that we make sure that we're keeping our guests and animals happy at all times, which means it's going to be quite a different process that we take to developing this zoo to Saltwell Safari Park, where we were able to take risks and kind of not care too much about how things look and just kind of move on and go through it. So we are bringing back, if you watch the minisode where I built my cozy cabins, we made these 3 basic walls that we're going to use in this build to start forming up our first major building. And we're just going to put in little bits and pieces here, there and everywhere and get everything lined up to create a nice little building. This is going to be our information kiosk. I did have to go through a few different processes and make a few changes here, there and everywhere, and this still doesn't, it didn't quite match up how I wanted it to. So I'm just trying to figure out a way to actually be able to keep these wall pieces on like part of the build itself, and then I can just grab them and move them into place. Once that's done, life is pretty easy now that we have these basic building blocks that have already been customized, and it makes actual doing any customization work a lot easier, because we just have to put fine details in, which is something that I find I've lacked in a lot of my other builds. So it's really nice to actually just be able to do this, pop it in, and then we can make any fine-tuning adjustments later on. And I said in the Saltwell Safari Zoo build that a lot of stuff I would do off cam, and a lot of the finer details and stuff I would put in off cam or in a separate episode. I don't need to do that now. I can actually do that as part of a major episode, so you can see me actually finishing off a zoo and making things look really nice and detailed. I still do have to like develop a little bit more on my skills as a builder in terms of this fine detailing, but actually I think I will do that naturally now that I know I have to do it as part of an episode rather than doing it off cam, because you kind of get a little bit burned out from doing this sort of stuff and then end up forgetting to do those fine details anyway. So I want to talk a bit more about this park. This first entrance bit is obviously going to be the main kind of start point for many of our guests that turn up, and you may be wondering how I'm actually going to link everything up. So I do plan to put in some transport rides, and what is essentially going to be created is almost little villages throughout the map. And you take a train to one part and there's a few exhibits and stuff, and then you take a train to another part, and basically what's going to happen is actually all the guests, if they go to that entrance part, they will then have to take a train to another part, and then they're in that bit. You then can't leave, basically. So I kind of want to trap people here by putting in this one-way train that goes from one part of the zoo to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And we don't do a loop that goes in the opposite direction, because then people could go to like section 2 of the zoo and then have to take the train back. And that's another reason why I built those cozy cabins, because I want to make it look like there are places for these guests to stay. So, and in the future I plan to build little hostels and stuff, and some larger cabins that kind of groups would hire out, and then some of these smaller log cabins built up around in like these little towns, and then I'll maybe build a little bar or something. Obviously we put vendors in that, and just make it look really nice and thematic, and I really want to kind of blend it in, and that's why I want to take my time with this one. So this is going to be quite a long series, I think, but I wanted to do something thematic for a while. Saltwell Safari Park is obviously like a jack of all trades zoo where we have animals from multiple continents, and it doesn't really have one set theme, and I really like that this is the theme that I've settled on, because I think I could do a lot with this, and it's quite nice to be in a different map and to have like constant snow coverage. It does kind of change seasonally, so we do get some points where all of that snow melts and we have a nice thaw, which is actually pretty useful because it gives me a chance to see if these builds actually look right. They're all covered in snow most of the time, so you can't really tell. But never mind. So we're just coming in here, we put in a toilet block, and we're just going to change some of the colours of things as we go. And the next building I want to put on over here is our exhibits, and then this side we're going to have our staff areas. So it's still pretty small in the grand scheme of things. There's not a lot of open space here, but I think it's enough, and it's going to make a really nice like starting block for people who are just arriving at the zoo, which I think is quite nice. The one thing I don't like is having that entrance right in the background, so we might actually, once we've built this, we might move it a little bit further into the zoo, and then we can put in a nice bit of tree coverage to just physically hide that entrance. I don't like looking at it. I don't like that it's there. It was okay for Saltwell Safari Park because obviously we didn't have a set theme, whereas that one I think just doesn't match what I'm going for at all, and it's quite off-putting. And this is one of the builds that I think I'm going to take quite seriously, so while I can't get rid of it in a traditional sense like you can in Sandbox by just deleting the thing, I do plan to cover it up so it looks like the guests have just appeared from a forest, and we'll just never look at that again. We'll just pretend that it doesn't exist. Last thing to do here, what we've done is we put in a trade centre, a keeper hut, a mechanics workshop, and a small staff room. We don't need to power because it's close to the entrance, but when I do eventually move the whole thing, we will need to consider where we're going to put a generator and potentially a water purifier. We may also need to put in a water temperature regulator as well. So we're just building this one around, and very much in the same way, copy and pasting door pieces, wall pieces, and window pieces for the rest of this building. I'm getting quite excited, like envisioning what I'm going to do with this one, and like all of the little bits and pieces that I'm going to make, like how I'm going to do the fences. One thing I'm not explored fully is how I'm going to do roofing and stuff, and that's something that I really do need to do a bit of practice on and a bit of work on, so you may see me playing around with a few ideas. And I'm obviously going to keep it simple at first, but I don't want to do too much and overdo it in the early stages of this build, but at some point I will really like knuckle down and make some good looking roof pieces. I have been watching a lot of other YouTubers to see how they do it, so it'll be interesting. And one of the things that I found quite unfortunate about the tundra and the taiga biomes is they don't have a lot of exhibit animals. In fact, I don't think they have any. So we've gone with American bullfrogs because they are American and this is a North American zoo. We're also going to put in the land scorpion and the diamondback terrapin, the land snail. I'm going to put in some of them. They breed really quickly and they always have pretty large offspring, and you can sell them pretty well. And the giant forest scorpion we're going to put in. Now I don't like the lack of symmetry in this, so we actually do end up changing it. We put the bullfrog in the middle and move the forest scorpion to the slot that's currently occupied by the bullfrog, because I don't like that. We have 2 forest biomes and then that water one on the end. So the water's now in the middle, and there we go, you're doing it now, and the forest's on the other side. And I've not decorated this bit yet, but we will be doing that. I'll probably just give it like kind of a loose caging around it. We're just knocking out a few objectives and getting a little bit more cash in. Obviously cash is going to be hard to come by in the early stages of this build. We will probably run the simulation, so you will see people wandering about, and I'm also going to name everything. So every exhibit, every vendor, every staff building is all going to be named, and it's all going to be grouped up properly. I want to zone everything off and do this correctly. Every time I build a new exhibit, I'm going to make sure that I've tweaked my work areas to get everything included in it, and I'm going to make sure that those work areas are fully staffed. Again, we may well take a financial hit on that, but I'm not too concerned, and I do want to just make sure that we're doing everything correctly from the off, instead of spotting an issue down the line where like a generator breaks down and it's not getting serviced because we don't have it as part of a work area, so that the staff can't actually, they know that it's there and it's on their work area route, but they just completely ignore it because they've not been told to go there, which I do find a little bit strange. It would be quite nice if staff just had this like initiative built in, where if you did call for one urgently, one just deviated from its work zone and did it. But we don't have that, and we just have to make sure that we're doing everything right first time, which is what I'm going to do. So we're just framing these with the wood logs, because we all know how difficult the exhibit habitats are when you put them in. They're very difficult to manage around. You can't really put a frame on them without disrupting something. So we're just putting in our wood logs, and then we'll frame them with some of the thicker logs just to make sure that it's all nice and tidy. And I think that looks pretty decent. Put some mid pieces in, and there we go, nice and thematic, part of what we're going for, and it looks pretty good. I will at some point as well go around and do some rotations on some of the logs so that there's a little bit of variation in them, they don't all look like one flat piece, but I'm not too bothered about that right now, because actually there's enough detail there to distract your eye from what is actually going on. So we've got people coming in, they're going to go straight up to that exhibit, take a look in, get a little bit of cash flow coming in, and wonder why the buildings don't have any roofs on them. But we will sort that out. Now I'm just going to up some prices, because we kind of want to be pulling in some cash from the off. We know these things are going to be popular, and the vending machines, actually the repair bills and the restocking bills, you kind of do need to put that prices up quite substantially to make sure that you're breaking even at least on them. I think the pricing that I've done, we're still going to be making a loss on them, but I will worry about that another time. So we're going to do some simple roofs for our staff building here, and something a little bit more advanced on the actual information building. We're going to make this a little veranda, and actually when we do finally put in a generator and a water purifier, they may need to go around the back of this building, which would give us an opportunity to extend that and make it look like it's something a little bit more law specific or law friendly, like as if it's actually part of something, and the building has like an exit door to that area. Obviously it wouldn't be used, but I think it would be good to put in. We're just going to put some lights in. Obviously I can't see how this is going to look lit at the moment because it's not nighttime, but I want to again make sure that I'm doing that work first and foremost, and I'm considering in advance where I'm going to need to put lighting, what areas I'm going to need to be lit, because I didn't do that with the last zoo, and I'm trying to progress when we move into a new zoo and learn from things that I've done wrong or things that I've just plain forgotten to do. So the next step was to build some roofing. Now, I'm not very good with roofs in Planet Zoo. I have played around a little bit in this episode, so you're going to see me messing about and messing things up, basically. I wanted to use some of the Arctic wood planks that we used in the mini-sode where we built the log cabins, but for the roof that I was wanting to create here, they didn't really work, and I did play around a lot with them to see if I could get something to work, but it just didn't seem to look right, and it didn't fit right with the rest of the build. So we do end up taking these out after playing around a little bit. I even tried changing the angle just a little bit to have it kind of almost curve as it gets down to the bottom of the roof, but nothing was working, so we do take them out eventually. And what I decided to go for was to have that large section in the entrance have this huge open area in the roof with glass panes, and I wanted to do that because we've got a lot of snow here and it reflects natural light very well. So the idea was that that natural light gets reflected right into that building and really opens it up and makes it look much bigger than it actually is. And I think it was kind of like almost like a ski chalet type thing that I wanted to create, and I think it works quite well. We obviously frame it well with our wood logs and everything just to keep that theme running all the way through, but I just think it worked out to be a really nice kind of thing to do, and it made the build really look great finished off, because this is our centerpiece, the information center. The exhibits are great and the staff building is great as well, but they've both got basic roofs. I don't even think we put a roof on the exhibit centers yet, the 3 exhibits that we've got. But we may come around and do that at another time. I don't think they look too bad, just flat at the moment though, so we're probably just going to leave it as it is. I then wanted to put an awning on the front of this building, which I think was really cool. We just used a different angle for our slate roof there. We are using slate roofs on these because I think they look really cool and they sit with the theme very nicely. And I think it's coming together really well. We then put a few lights in as well. I did have a little bit of an issue where I thought that the research from our other zoo didn't carry over for some strange reason. And I think it was just because I was messing around in the menus and looked at what I was looking for several times without realising I was actually staring right at it. But this is looking really nice. I'm really quite happy with how this all turned out, and it certainly fits the theme, and this is something that you're going to see quite a lot of in these builds, so much so that I may not even do some of the huger building speed builds if we're actually going to be using a similar theme throughout, but we will still be doing those builds. We'll be doing a lot more of the detailing, decoration and stuff on them, just to make sure that there's still enough stuff going out and you can see me developing this zoo as I go. And I just think it's important to show that without sacrificing too much boredom by having you guys watching me do the same thing over and over again. But I'm really looking forward to this zoo, and doing this episode kind of like made me feel passionate about the game again and passionate about building and creating in it. I've been going through a bit of a dry spell where I was kind of just doing stuff, and I don't feel like I was I mean, I was still putting effort in and doing a good job of stuff, but I don't think I was quite progressing. And I always like to progress during these videos. I always like to learn something new or do other things, and I was kind of just lacking a bit of inspiration. I think it's because we'd spent such a long time building and expanding Saltwell Safari Park, so that's another reason why I wanted to do a brand new franchise. And this one, I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, we are doing it on hard mode, so we are going to need to make sure that we're doing everything right. I did mention this, I mentioned this earlier in the episode, so I'm not going to talk about that anymore. One thing I did realise was these roof pieces, I'd sunk them a little bit too far into the building itself without realising, but they're okay as they are, so I've just left them. I may put some new roof pieces over the top of them anyway to cover them up, so we can actually put a proper end trim or an end eave on there anyway, just to finish it off. But already I'm really liking this. I think it's a nice open area, it's quite inviting, it looks cozy, it's quite thematic, and I think it represents a really nice entrance to the zoo and what we want to create. The one concern I do have is that it's very close to the entrance, and we do end up moving it, so you're going to see in the next episode where we end up moving it to and what we do with it from then on, and I continue that development in episode 2, and we actually are going to be building our first habitat in that second episode. The habitat is going to be reindeers, and I'm quite looking forward to it. So that's pretty much the finished build there. I'm just making sure that I've got decent finances. We've still got 5,500 in the bank, and we're good to go. People coming in, we're just going to finish off with a few more trees and make some little scenes just to finish it off and tidy it all up. And I'm going to be doing this more often as well, so we're not going to be saying, oh, I'll do this later on, I'll do this in another episode. We want to tidy as we go and make sure that we've got everything in place to make our areas look beautiful and well decorated. Things like benches, bins, information kiosks and stuff like that, we want to make sure that we've got them all in place. And this, I was just trying to blanket it with the terrain to make it look like it's not kind of just surrounded by nothingness, like we just plonked it down somewhere. Just wanted to make sure that it was all part of the environment and everything looked like it should be there, including some benches with some lovely little canopies over the top so that the guests can come out and enjoy their food in the freezing cold. I wonder if we can actually use heaters. I don't like... One thing that I don't get is why we've got guests coming in shorts and with no coats. Everyone should have winter coats on here. Why are you not why are you not smartly dressed? Maybe you're all from Newcastle and you don't need them. Never mind. So yeah, we're getting dark now, so that's a perfect opportunity for us to actually see what the place looks like lit up. I'm just plopping down a few more lights just to cover up those areas where it's a little bit dark, including the areas around our exhibits and these tables themselves. These things are really nice, but they don't put out a lot of light. So I may put some on the tables themselves because I think that adds a really nice finishing touch to them. And then we were just hiring a few more staff and making sure the work areas are correctly set up. And we should be approaching our lovely little showcase just as we put in some final fences to frame this build very nicely. And of course, we want to add in one finishing touch, a little awning over the top there, and some advertising hoardings where I've actually designed a logo for the zoo, which you will see at the end of this video. I didn't put a great deal of effort into it, but I was pretty happy with it, and it kind of gives me the effect that I'm wanting to go for. I also put in some of these guest stopper barriers. Now, I was hoping to use these to stop guests clipping through walls, but I don't think it quite worked. It's okay though, we can just remove some paths. So here we are. We've got our exhibits here that have proven very popular and brought in a nice little bit of money to keep us going and allow us to continue building in the way that we're going. Through into the main complex here, where we've got people queuing up for information and using the vending machines. Nobody's using ATM yet, but there's probably no reason to at the moment, so we may actually disable those. They're just pretty much fluff, but I would like it to be nice and decorative anyway. I didn't really need 3, but never mind, we've got 3. It's another view of the information kit. Oh god, someone's face just clipped right through my camera. And yeah, so it's been pretty popular. We've got about 250 people in at the moment, which is really nice to see for a small zoo with only 3 exhibits in. Our staff area is nicely labelled, and the staff actually have perfect access to them. There's nothing kind of interfering with everything, and it looks really cool. Security camera there in the background, and here it is, Northland Safari Park, our lovely logo. We'll probably put a bit of a closer up look. It'll be in the thumbnail, so you'll see it there. But I really wanted to do a lot of custom advertising and stuff for this, just to make sure that we were really putting in that extra effort to make it look nice and detailed. And that's the finished build. So next episode we are going to have this moved, because I want to get it quite far away from the entrance area so that there's a long walk. And I hope you've enjoyed watching this. I'm really excited to start a new zoo. Make sure you drop me a like, a comment and a subscribe. If you'd like to see me build anything else in part of this zoo, drop me a challenge. I'd quite like to do something. It'd be interesting to see what you guys have in terms of your ideas for the build. And I will see you all in the next episode. Thanks for watching.